Everyone up, everyone in. Time for the fun to begin. Come along with me, Lookout Bear, on a brand new adventure. Hello, everyone. Michael B. Moynihan here, Zubilee Zoo's resident adventurer, Lookout Bear. I, along with my friends Paul.
Hello, Zubaroos.
And Billy.
Welcome to the show.
Have teamed up to bring you an informative and entertaining deep dive into the loving world of Zubilee Zoo, one episode at a time. So please, buckle up and join us for...
When you're in Zubilee,
Zubilee Zoo, Zubilee Zoo. Magic and wonder are waiting for you. So come on with us now and discover the wonder of you. Welcome to Zubilee Zoo.
That's right. You can listen to the brand new Zubilee Zoo podcast, dropping the 1st and the 15th of every month, wherever you get your podcasts, or at electronicmediacollective.com/ZubileeZooPod.
Hey everybody, this is Bobby Porter from Battle for the Planet of the Apes, Elm Street 5, The Blob, amongst other things, and you are listening to Moose's Monster Mash.
You're listening to Moose's Monster Mash.
Welcome, Horror Hounds, to an all-new episode of Moose's Monster Mash. I'm your host, Moose. Joining me this month is the creative team behind the beginning of the year horror film. It's the film to start the year off right, or end the year right, depending on where you sit. But it's New Fear's Eve, and let's not wait any longer. Let's get into it. Please welcome PJ Starks and Eric Huskisson.
Hello. Good.
How we doing, folks?
Good. Doing pretty good. How are you?
Good.
Yep.
Now, you guys are in post-production on this film.
Correct. Yes, sir. Yes.
So where did the idea for all this come from?
It was all me. Yeah, Eric runs the company. He's the face of the company. He comes up with all the good ideas.
Everybody thinks PJ owns this company and it's all him, but truth be told, he thinks it's funny, but it's not.
Yeah, he's bitter if you can't tell. But
PJ's just easier to get a hold of.
I'm just, the long and the short of that situation is I've become the face of the company just because by virtue of having done this longer and being the one who does a lot of marketing, and plus I do a lot of executive producing and stuff on other projects, so I'm out there not just because of what we're doing, but because of some of these other projects, so it just kind of comes with the territory. But as far as New Fear's Eve is concerned, we were making 13 Slays Till Christmas, and I just randomly came up with the idea it usually hits me like if I'm in the shower or if I'm driving, and I'll either come up with a concept and then later on come up with the title, or I'll come up with the title and then kind of flesh out the concept. And I came up with the title while I was driving one day. I was like, oh, New Fear's Eve, that sounds like a cool name. What could it be about? And then slowly started coming up with the idea. And originally it was supposed to be an anthology. And, of course, I pitched the idea to Eric. And per usual, he rolls his eyes because I'm always throwing ideas at him. And, of course, we're in the throes of making another picture. So he's like, yeah, how about we get through this movie and then talk about what our next potential movie could be? And so I shelved it, and then we put 13 Slays Till Christmas out, and it did fairly well in terms of really getting out there and reviews and things of that nature. So Eric came to me and was like, hey, we definitely need to do another holiday-based film, and it just seems natural to go in the direction of the next holiday. So what about that 13th or the New Year's Eve idea that you'd come up with? So I pulled it off the shelf and kind of started working on it. And then once I got it all fleshed out, threw the idea at him, and here we are.
I've learned that holiday horror always hits home. Like, I'm not sure what it is, but if it's holiday themed, regardless of the holiday, it always finds a special spot with somebody.
Right. Well, and the other good thing, too, about making a holiday horror film, and Eric and I actually found this out the hard way, and that's when you make a holiday-based film, every year, or every year that holiday comes back around, almost always your movie comes back around as well, because it hits lists and things. And when we made 13 Slaves Till Christmas, we did that during the pandemic. So the film got shut down for a while, and originally our plan was to release it in December of 2020. Well, when December started getting closer, of course the film was already completed and everything, but unfortunately, due to the amount or the needs of like medical facilities and stuff, polyurethane was at a shortage. So Blu-ray cases, cellophane wrap, stuff like that was not readily available. So ultimately our film got pushed back, and it came out in March of 21. And honestly, nobody really gives a shit about a Christmas movie in March.
Well, at that point, you should have just pushed it to July.
You would think that, but you know, when you work on a project and you don't really want to sit on it because you're worried that, you know, if you don't release it while the iron is still hot, then you're really going to miss the mark. But then sometimes if you release it too soon, but ultimately it was like the plan was the process of putting it out there and getting it distributed had already begun. So it was still the physical media side. It was that got hit, but then it really was supposed to release in December, but then because of other things happening as well, that pushed it back even further. So it ended up going into the next year. However, and this happened this past year, when Christmas time came around, the movie started popping back up. And we ended up hitting best holiday horror lists on like Good Housekeeping and Cosmopolitan magazine. And, you know, that was completely unexpected. So that's the long way of getting to that point, is by saying that, you know, when you make a movie that's holiday based,
it's built-in marketing.
It almost, exactly. It almost always comes back around somehow in some capacity. Volumes of Blood still does that occasionally because it's Halloween. So inevitably, New Year's Eve should do the same.
Oh, absolutely. And I'm hoping to have you guys back here in a couple months to do a deep dive into 13 Slays of Christmas.
Awesome.
For my 13 Days of Christmas episodes. So, because that's how I came across you guys in the first place. It's like every year I'm looking at like Christmas horror. I'm like, oh, what's this? Oh, this looks awesome. And then just kind of get down the rabbit hole, and then New Year's Eve popped up, and like the projects you're working on, I was like, oh, this sounds really cool. So why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about what New Year's Eve is?
Basically, of course, this is based around a New Year's Eve. It bases around a company called Hooper Industries, where there's 3 co-workers that work there, and they're actually all friends as well. And they basically are talking one night and realize that they have ran into this character in a certain costume, and realize that each one of them realized, well, it wasn't just me, the bossing it. And what they don't realize is the company is forcing them to come to a mandatory New Year's Eve party. Their boss is not the nicest or greatest boss in the world, and he's forcing this on them. And the doctor, who is the nemesis in the film, knows where they work and actually locks the place down during the party, and then, of course, all hell ensues after that.
Nice. So without...
Is that good, PJ, or do you got anything? Go ahead.
Without seeing it, is there plans for like a part 2? This sounds like something you could turn into at least a miniseries.
I mean,
well,
go ahead.
I was just going to say, if we get really good distribution, if we get, a good deal of distribution, and they are wanting to see a part 2 possibly, or asking if there's a part 2, PJ has already come to me and says he has an idea how to move forward with a part 2. Now, depending on the success of this is whether probably that'll go forward with that. But I'll let PJ take over with, since he has an idea for the second.
Oh, I mean, you pretty much covered it at that point. Yeah, I mean, I know how the next installment will go. Of course, I don't have it fully fleshed out, but I know what the story is, and I know the direction it's going to go in. So I already have an idea as far as what the first, second, and third act are going to be, and how things play out. But of course, I'm not going to invest a whole lot of time in sitting down and writing a script and all that until we know for a fact that's going to be what our next project is. That's we get asked that all the time, like, oh, what's your next movie going to be? What's your next movie going to be? And of course, you can always say, well, this is what we want to do next, and that's really what it comes down to. It's what you want to do next, but not necessarily what you're going to do next.
Right.
We've gone through that several times where we'll say, oh, this should be what our next project, this is going to be our next project, and then whether it's circumstances or financing or whatever the case may be, we end up having to do something different. We went through that with Devil's Night, which was the third volume of the Blood film, and we were trying to raise financing for that film, which was upwards of $60,000, and we were unable to raise that money. And then, ironically, what little we did raise, we were able to put towards 13 Slaves Till Christmas, and that's how that film coalesced. However, going into this movie, we ended up raising more than what we were needing for Devil's Night. So it's exciting and it's cool because we were able to make this movie the way we wanted to make it, and actually better because we raised more money than we were trying to get. But in some ways, like for me personally, it's frustrating because we were trying to do the same thing with Devil's Night, and that script is really good and really polished, and we weren't able to bring it to fruition. This script is really good and really polished, but they're two totally different films. So with this one, we're still able to make the movie we wanted to make, and in some respects, better than what we had anticipated originally.
Right.
But yeah, so a part of me looks back and I'm like, man, if we were able to do what we did with this one, we would have been able to make Devil's Night.
No, you go. All I was gonna say with Devil's Night is one, like you said, it's pretty much not completely fleshed out, but we know what we're gonna do with it. But it's one that we talked about going back to if we ever had the money again, and maybe not even really be a part 3, but more of a standalone. But it's something we have looked at possibly doing it another time.
Well, I mean, it sounds like you guys are building a track record with the fans, so you're becoming a trusted entity at this point. So
we're trying.
Yeah.
So far, it seems to be working out, I guess. But a lot of that is, it's not just us. It's it's a lot of hard work and perseverance on our part. But then, of course, it's all the individuals that we work with, because and truthfully, they don't they really don't get enough of the credit and the kudos. Because like I said earlier, when it comes to, it's like it's kind of the same situation, that Eric was alluding to. I've become the face of the company, right? So I do a majority of the interviews and stuff. So I'm out in the public eye more often than he is. But he's just as integral to the company and what we do and the films that we make. He's on, he's part of the process the entire way from conception to completion. Same thing with the individuals taking it a step further. These people that we work with, our crew that we work with, like Alex Clark, who's our director of photography, and then his first AC, which is Stephen Dean, and then we had a new guy come on named Ryan McCain, and he was incredible. Like he was like a superstar on set. And then Josh Siegel is our script supervisor, Joshua Orion, who does our boom. And then, of course, we have PAs, Jackson Jorn, Landon Dean. So it's like we have all these individuals who, at the end of the day, they really don't. And then, of course, our special effects team, Stephen Hodke, Issa Morales, and then Blake Bolden. It's like they don't really get the credit that they truly deserve, because these people are the backbones of every project, not just ours, but other projects people are making. It's like these individuals, these people that do these jobs, because you're only as good as the crew that you work with.
Absolutely.
So we've been incredibly fortunate to work with some really great people.
I remember sitting in on a panel you guys gave at Scarefest last year. And you guys are talking about New Year's Eve and a bunch of other independent movies. And a thought popped into my head then, and I've been waiting to ask. Have you considered, if this is a success, taking New Year's Eve or any of your other movies into like the graphic novel medium?
Well, it's funny that you asked that.
Yeah.
Eric,
you go ahead with that one, Pete. I'm going to let you take it because you've been contacted by more than one person about stuff like this. So,
well, I mean, we have been asked about this, and it's funny because when we were making, or when we were in the process, we had finished Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, and we were moving into Devil's Night. We did have a company that had contacted us about possibly doing some sort of graphic novel. So I sat down and I wrote a script, which was a 60-page treatment. It was a single narrative. What it did was it took our slasher, the Face, who was in both Volumes of Blood movies, and ultimately his overarching story through the entire franchise was going to play out in Devil's Night. Well, of course that never came to be, but we did have plans to release a graphic novel that took place in between Volumes of Blood and Volumes of Blood Horror Stories, and then was also kind of took place, and then took place after Devil's Night. So it tied what was going to be the three films together in essentially a fourth installment, but in graphic novel form. And I wrote the script, but first of all, Devil's Night never got off the ground fully, right. And it didn't really make sense for us to move forward on the graphic novel. Once again, though, I like the story. The script is called Post Trauma, and it touches on people who are suffering from various types of post-traumatic stress, and they're going through a program, and they get trapped in this building in this program, and they're being hunted by this sadistic murderer.
No.
And they're trying to survive each other, they're trying to survive their own demons, and then ultimately they're also trying to survive this individual who's who's there to kill them. So
Really is the
there's a
ultimate game
lot-
of survival.
Right. So there's a lot going on in this script. So I have before talked to Eric about maybe revamping it and making it kind of its own thing, where it's not, once again, similar to us, like what Eric said about us rebranding Devil's Night and going in a different direction with it, still making the same film, but tweaking some things so it's a standalone. It's not necessarily directly connected to Volumes of Blood. Doing the same thing with the post-drama script. But of course, right now, that's all talk.
Yeah. And the reason I asked is because I've noticed in the last, 3 years, there has been a resurgence in, the horror genre for graphic novels, and the horror community is eating it up.
I've seen, over the years, I know there's been a lot of IPs that have been extremely popular and stayed. I know Ghostbusters is one of them. Aliens versus Predator is another one where they've continued to kind of make one-off series and things. But yeah, I have noticed where that's the thing about horror. Horror is popular in so many different types of mediums.
We have a rabid fan base.
Yeah.
It is literally that double-edged sword. It could be very, very beneficial, or it could be very, very hurtful.
Right, and that's why we do horror. I mean, we have other ideas for doing other stuff like comedy and stuff, but there's so many websites and cons and festivals and the events with horror. It's easy to get it out there. There's this big community where you can get it out there. There's not the comedy and drama. You'd have to have so much post money to advertise and try to get it out to a theater for anything else, where horror is just out there every day.
I say horror, you get booked at a convention that has a film fest, or just booked at a horror convention and be like, here, this is my project, take a look. And you'll get new eyes every time.
And the other great thing about horror, and we've talked about this before, it's it's fantastic to have a recognizable face, and from a marketing standpoint, it does help a lot in terms of getting your film out there, especially if you're working in the independent sector. But how many great horror films, as horror fans, have we watched where you don't recognize anybody that's in the cast? It's complete unknowns, and it's still a great film. And at the end of the day, what makes the horror genre so great is not only how versatile it is, but it transcends every other culture. What's scary here is scary somewhere else, whether it's a monster or a guy with a knife or stuck in an elevator that's filling up with water. So there's, the claustrophobia element, there's the water element. So it's people can look at these things and understand the fears, because a lot of this stuff resonates with them, even if they don't necessarily have a frame of reference, because in a lot of cases monsters aren't real or may not be real. So that's why horror does so well all over the place.
Right, and there's not a whole lot that can get lost in translation.
Right, and that's the thing about comedy. It's what's funny here is not always what's funny overseas. And so many times whenever a company makes a film that's not horror, almost always they have to shoot additional or alternate material to put in the films so it's more successful in other regions around the country. Whereas I guarantee you, when they released The Boogeyman overseas, they didn't have to necessarily add anything to it, because it's about something that's hiding under the bed or something that's hiding in the closet. You don't need something alternate or additional to add to that. So it works just as well there as it does here.
Oh, I 100% agree. It's scared is scared. That is a universal language.
Yep.
So, speaking of cast, you guys do have a couple known entities in this film.
Correct.
How'd that come about?
Basically, it was just PJ reaching out to a couple of people, actually, I think. Jeffrey Reddick, we had already talked to. He's been a friend of PJ's for a while, and I've become friends with him. And him being a Kentucky guy, it was just a way for us to get him in here, and he's been wanting to come in here and work with us anyway. PJ, did Jeffrey give you the names of the others, or did you just reach out to Dave and Flessia? Or you reached out to Flessia, didn't you? And then got Dave involved.
Yeah, so I had reached out to Flessia via Lance Wagner, and
that's right.
Because he's friends with her, and that's the thing about Flessia. That's really the thing about all the actors, the horror icons and horror actors that we have in the film. I mean, yes, they're known for, Sleepaway Camp and Victor Crowley and VHS, but if you watch their performances in anything that they do, they're actually very strong character actors. So it doesn't really matter if they're what type of role they're playing. More often than not, yes, it's in a horror film, but the performances are always solid. So what happened was we knew we wanted. Eric and I are picky, but we're getting pickier as we go along with actors. So we knew if we're going to have somebody that's involved with the project, we want somebody who also comes with acting chops to be able to bring that gravitas to the character or the role. So I reached out to Lance. Lance said, "Let me talk to Flessia." Got Flessia, gave me her number. So then Eric and I got on the phone with her. Talked to her. Of course, I don't know if you've met her before or not, but she is an absolute sweetheart.
Oh, yeah.
One of the nicest people in the world. Sent her the script. She read it. She loved it. And she was like, so we got back on the phone with her, and she's like, yes, I want to do the project. I loved the script. It's funny. It's scary. And then she said, just out of curiosity, I noticed there's some other roles in here that you could potentially fill with other name actors. Did you have anybody in mind, or was there anybody that you were thinking of? And I said, well, it's funny that you asked that, and I'd already talked to Eric about this because I had my eye on Dave Sheridan and Hannah Fearman. So I threw those names at her because I knew that she knew them. And she was like, oh, absolutely. What roles? Told them what the roles were. She said, I'll talk to them. If they're interested, send them the script, and then we'll go from there. And that's exactly what she did, and the rest is history. So the next thing you know, we're on the phone with Dave. We're on the phone with Hannah. Of course, throughout this entire process, we are talking to Jeffrey. He was on board the project, but we weren't announcing that yet. So we kind of announced him much later, because he had a lot of stuff that was going on, and we didn't want that announcement to interfere with any of that, because he was working with some Netflix stuff, and yeah, so that's ultimately how we were able to get Hannah and Dave and Flessia all involved on the project.
Yeah, unfortunately, Dave and Flessia and Jeffrey all came on as producers as well, so they were really involved with the first Indiegogo and reaching out to people to help us raise money to get this film made. So them coming on with producers is a lot of the reasons why this film is getting made, because they helped us out a lot getting not only just perks of stuff that they said they could do and contact people to get stuff done, and it brought in a lot of money for the Indiegogo because of that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, like we just said, these are known character actors in the horror community, and they come with a built-in fan base and a great Rolodex of friends and supporters. And
right.
It's always good to have the people like that in your stable when you're starting a small project.
Absolutely.
In the films and stuff you've made, have you run into any issues with the like SAG actors being able to work on independent films, or how does that work?
Either PJ or you or.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, all the projects that we do are non-union. We've talked in the past about maybe going union, and I did have back in 2017 after we had made Volumes Blood Horror Stories, Eric and I had talked more seriously about maybe trying to see what it would take to go union or be able to work with actors who were SAG on future projects. And there was a short stint where I reached out to SAG and spoke to them. And this is not me saying anything negative about them as a whole, but I can say that the individual that I worked with was less than helpful, and she had sent me a contract for basically what was called their new media deal, which was exactly that at the time. It was brand new. She sent us the contract, and we looked at it, and there was a lot of stuff in the contract that just did not jive with what we were doing. A lot of it did not pertain to the type of project we were making, all the way from financing to how we run our set, and it was just, so I contacted them back and explained, like, you know, we need to negotiate on some of this stuff, because ultimately it's like a lot of this doesn't pertain to what we do and how we do things. And the lady was like, "Well, just sign it and we'll work all that out later." And I told her, I said, "That's not how this works. Like, you don't sign something and then work it out later. You work it out to approve what you're signing. That's how you do it." And she's like, "No, don't worry. No, you're overthinking it. It's not that big a deal. Let's get this going. Just sign it. And then we'll work out all these details at a later time." And I wrote her back. I said, "We're not signing anything until this is worked out now." And then I never really heard back from her. So at that point, I walked away, and I had a really bad taste in my mouth with SAG.
Yeah. Well, I had contacted them earlier than that about some situations, and you know, their micro budget is $250,000, and we were looking at 25 to 50, and it was basically the same thing. But when you read into it, you have to pay for an accountant to write the checks out to the people that are on set. So, you know, that's taking more money out of our budget by doing that. You know, and then there's fees and stuff you have to do. And I'm like, your micro budget's $250, we're at $25.50, and you're going to take more money out of our budget to do things that we have to do there. I was like, how is that helping us? And it was going to cost us more money to do it. And them being union, they have stipulations where you can only work so many hours a day. You can't work over this. If there's a kid involved, you have to do this. And PJ and I are weekend warriors. We only work on the weekend. And it was just, there was nothing about it that was going to work for what we did.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, the other thing that we've run into with SAG as well is either friends we have or people that we've worked with who have signed on to SAG. It is instilled in them very heavily, do not work on non-union projects. But then a lot of these actors, these larger actors that we all know, a majority of them are SAG, and they're consistently doing non-union projects. And what we've come to kind of learn is that when you're new at it, SAG, with all of their rules, will scare you into not taking roles and projects if they're non-union. But then when we've had conversations with other SAG individuals, like people who are attached to SAG later on, and it's like, how do you do all these non-union projects? And it's like, They might call. It's like a little slap on the wrist, but what are they? They're not really gonna. They're not gonna do anything.
But yeah, we've actually also had people that come on and acted in our films before, and now won't because now they're SAG.
Right.
So we've lost really good actors because they're afraid to come work with us because of the insurance and everything else that they're told that they're going to lose if they work a non-union film.
Right.
That's a shame.
So PJ
we're not advocating.
Yeah, we are not. Yeah, and we're not bashing union.
Right. This is just our experience.
Yeah.
With dealing with the union. It may be a situation where when you do get into much larger budgeted projects, it actually it benefits the project to be able to do it that way. But like Eric said, at our level, it just doesn't make sense fiscally and logistically.
Right. I mean, you're going to put out more money for what? Yeah.
Just to satisfy them.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
It doesn't make sense. I mean, if you guys are putting out bigger budget films, maybe.
Right.
But I think you're right. Where you guys are at right now, you're in a good spot.
Yeah, when we're making the Meg 3.
Sharknado 27.
Right. Well, I don't know. Are Sharknado's union pictures? I don't know. I'm not so sure. I know they're made by the.
I have a feeling a lot of the cameo actors in there are all SAG. So it probably.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. I think they pulled some strings.
They might have.
So before we wrap this up, you guys have a Indiegogo campaign running currently.
Yes.
How many more days are left? Well, when does that end?
We have a week. 7 days.
Awesome.
Technically 6 days at this point because it's next Friday when it ends.
And what all are you trying to raise funds to finish out?
Sorry, what was that?
Well, I was going to say it was how many funds have we raised up to this point? Last I checked, we were at 69%, so we've got 31% left to go. We're trying to raise 10K, and we're so close, yet so far away. But we've gotten a lot of support up to this point. I'm pretty confident that we'll be able to bridge that gap, but we won't know for the next 6 days.
Yeah, it's going to be a nail biter week.
A little bit.
And when is New Fear's Eve slated to release?
I wish I could answer that question.
When it comes out.
Yeah. We are waiting for the film to be finished to where we can get it to its whole point, and then there's some people waiting to see it that have seen the trailer that are interested in it, but we have to wait for that to happen to see if they offer us anything, and then when they are wanting to distribute it themselves in their window that they have for it. So that's why we really can't answer it, because we don't at this point have a distributor for it.
Nice. So where can listeners keep up to date with all things New Fear's Eve and any other projects you guys have coming out?
You can follow PJ and I on Facebook. Our Blood Moon Pictures has a Facebook page. There is a fan base page for New Fear's Eve where they can keep up with what's going on, see behind the scene pictures that get popped up weekly. And we do have a website, bloodmoonpictures.com, that we are presently updating with all the New Fear's Eve information on it.
And check out our OnlyFans.
Oh.
Yes. Oh, I thought we went to fan. Oh, I thought we did Fansly. Did you do OnlyFans?
Yeah, I had to set that up. We needed to, look, $20 is $20. So
I thought we agreed to Fansly, but okay.
Bloody feet.
Yeah,
pics.
if Eric and I have to show our buttholes to our friends just to be able to make a little extra money, then
$20 is $20.
That's right.
Hey, you know what? That's $20 we didn't have.
Yeah, and it's the easiest money we've ever made.
Filmmaking's a dirty business.
It is. I used to show my butthole to strangers for free. Now I actually get paid.
Minus the bleaching we had to do before we got on there.
Right. Yeah. That's we call that the overhead.
Or the underhead.
That's overhead.
There you go.
Listeners, I will put all of their links in the episode description for easy access. Go support their Indiegogo campaign. You can find me and other great podcasters over at electronicmediacollective.com, or if you're just looking for me, head over to Facebook and Twitter, Moose Media Inc. Just look for the Moose. Guys, this has been a blast. I'm looking
thank
forward...
you so much for having us.
Oh,
yeah,
absolutely.
thanks for having us on.
I'm looking forward to doing a deep dive here again in a couple months on your Christmas movie, because I think that'll be fun. So,
all right, sounds good.
So, listeners, like I said, go support their Indiegogo campaign. Watch for New Year's Eve coming down the pike. And until next time, Horror Hounds, Ash on.
This has been Moose's Monster Mash. Come back for more chills and thrills if you dare.